In the grand tapestry of human history, threads often intertwine, sometimes fray, but rarely, if ever, does a single thread break so cleanly as to redefine the entire weave. We stand at a precipice, not of time, but of imagination, peering into an abyss of what might have been. Imagine, if you will, a different America. A continent fractured, its destiny cleaved by the outcome of a single brutal conflict. What if the cannons of Gettysburg had roared a different tune? What if the strategic genius of a general, the resolve of a nation, had veered just slightly off course? What if the South had won the Civil War?
This isn't merely a thought experiment, it's an excavation of an alternate reality, a serious documentary journey into a world where freedom's light flickered, and a nation built on contradictory ideals was forever carved into two distinct, often warring entities. Prepare to witness a world familiar yet unsettlingly alien. Two Americas, locked in an eternal embrace of rivalry and ideological opposition.
Historical divergence, the sundered republic. The point of divergence in this timeline is a confluence of factors, a historical perfect storm. The summer of 1863, rather than marking the high tide of the Confederacy at Gettysburg, witnesses a decisive Southern triumph. A more audacious charge, a miscommunication on the Union side, perhaps even a crucial diplomatic recognition from a cotton-starved Britain or France, transforms a tactical victory into a strategic endgame. The Union, demoralized and fractured by political infighting, facing an exhausted populace weary of war, is forced to the negotiating table. The Treaty of Richmond, signed in early 1864, is a document that redraws not just borders, but the very soul of a continent. It officially recognizes the Confederate States of America, CSA, as an independent nation, an uneasy peace forged in the crucible of devastating war. The United States of America, USA, shrinks, shedding its southern limb, a profound amputation that leaves a phantom ache for generations. The border, running roughly along the Ohio River and the Mason-Dixon Line, then extending precariously westward, becomes not just a political boundary, but a fortified scar, a chasm of competing ideologies. The subsequent decades are defined by this uneasy coexistence. Westward expansion becomes a desperate race, not against a natural frontier, but against a rival power. The Great Plains, once a shared destiny, become a new battleground for competing visions. The free soil expansion of the United States versus the institution of chattel slavery spreading into the new Confederate territories of Missouri, Arizona, and even parts of California. This leads to numerous border skirmishes, an almost Cold War-esque tension, occasionally boiling over into localized, bloody conflicts that never quite escalate into full-scale war, but constantly threaten to. Without a united America to intervene, the Spanish-American War, as we know it, never ignites. Instead, the Confederacy, ever seeking new lands for its peculiar institution, casts covetous eyes on Cuba and other Caribbean islands, seeing them as natural extensions of its agrarian empire. The United States, meanwhile, focuses internally. A smaller, more ideologically pure nation, consolidating its identity, its gaze fixed often and resentfully across the fortified border. The rise of industrial Europe, unimpeded by a singular American superpower, proceeds at a different pace, global power dynamics shifting dramatically without the eventual overwhelming presence of the United States.
Technology and science. Innovation in two shades.
In this fractured world, technological and scientific progress would be shaped by the divergent priorities of two nations. The Confederate States, founded on the principle of perpetual slavery and an agrarian economy, would find less impetus for widespread industrial innovation. Why invent complex labor-saving machinery when a vast, unpaid workforce is readily available? Instead, Confederate ingenuity would turn toward technologies of control and defense. Imagine rudimentary surveillance technologies, perhaps early automated drones patrolling vast plantations, not for efficiency, but for suppression. Sound monitoring devices to detect coded communication among the enslaved, specialized weaponry for internal security forces, and sophisticated border defense systems would likely see accelerated development. Agricultural innovation would focus on maximizing yields of cash crops like cotton and tobacco, with less emphasis on diversified, sustainable farming or mechanization. Roads and infrastructure might be less developed in areas heavily reliant on slave labor, as enslaved populations were often moved on foot or by basic means. Meanwhile, the United States, smaller but ideologically unified and driven by a necessity to compete with its southern rival, would become an intense crucible of industrial and technological advancement. With fewer natural resources lost to the CSA and a heightened focus on efficiency and innovation to compensate for its reduced territory, the USA would likely embrace industrialization with even greater fervor. The internal combustion engine, electricity, and telecommunications would proliferate rapidly, driven by free labor and a competitive spirit. Inventors and scientists seeking freedom and opportunity might gravitate overwhelmingly to the USA, creating a brain drain from the less innovative CSA. Yet, even in the USA, progress might be skewed. A persistent fear of the CSA could divert significant resources into military technology, perhaps even leading to a separate, accelerated nuclear arms race decades later, or a heightened focus on defensive fortifications and border patrols. Medical research, while generally advancing, might face ethical dilemmas concerning the legal status of enslaved persons who might try to escape to the USA, or the differing ethical standards of medical experimentation in the CSA, which could hinder collaborative global advancements. The world would see two distinct technological ecosystems emerging on one continent, each reflecting its founding principles. Society and culture, a divided soul. Daily life in these two Americas would be profoundly different, shaped by their opposing societal foundations. In the Confederate States of America, the institution of slavery would not only persist but solidify, becoming even more deeply entrenched and legally codified. It would permeate every aspect of society. A rigid caste system would govern interactions, with white planter aristocracy at the apex, followed by poor whites, and then the vast enslaved African American population at the bottom. The myth of the peculiar institution would be endlessly propagated, enshrined in education, literature, and even religious doctrine, justifying its existence as natural and necessary. Cities in the CSA would be characterized by strict segregation, constant surveillance, and the omnipresent threat of punitive measures against the enslaved. Public spaces would be designed to reinforce social hierarchy. Cultural expression among African Americans would become even more coded, with spirituals, blues music, and oral traditions serving as vital, subversive forms of communication and resistance. Revolts, though brutally suppressed, would be a constant undercurrent, inspiring secret societies and underground networks, perhaps even leading to a more formalized underground railroad extending into the free United States, now a hostile foreign nation. For white Confederates, society would be highly militarized, emphasizing honor, tradition, and states' rights, yet paradoxically, a strong central government would be required to maintain the institution of slavery. Patriotism would be fierce, intertwined with a deep suspicion of Northern values and a romanticized view of their agrarian past. Their art and literature would glorify the lost cause, though in this reality it would be the one cause, celebrating heroism, tradition, and the sanctity of their way of life, often through a lens of racial superiority. In the United States, a smaller yet fiercely proud nation, the cultural identity would be forged in opposition to the CSA. Abolitionism would become a defining national characteristic, bordering on a civil religion. Annual Emancipation Days would be grand national celebrations, a powerful counterpoint to the Confederate Founding Day. Immigration would likely continue, perhaps even accelerate, as those seeking freedom and opportunity fled the shadow of the CSA, making the USA an even more diverse melting pot, albeit within a more constrained geographical area. Art, literature, and music in the USA would celebrate freedom, progress, and the struggles of the free individual, often reflecting a sense of moral superiority over their southern neighbor. Language itself might subtly diverge, with unique regional dialects and slang evolving on either side of the border, reflecting their distinct historical paths and social structures. The two nations would gaze across their shared border, each seeing the other as a perversion of true American ideals, a constant, simmering ideological conflict.
Geopolitics and power, a fractured world stage.
The geopolitical landscape of this alternate reality would be utterly transformed. Without a united American superpower to emerge from the Civil War, the global balance of power would remain firmly in Europe's grasp for far longer. Great Britain and France, having recognized the Confederacy, would maintain strong economic ties, primarily for cotton, but their initial diplomatic success might evolve into a moral dilemma as the CSA's slave-based economy proves increasingly archaic and ethically problematic on the world stage. The two Americas would be a constant source of international tension, a permanent hot-cold war that could erupt into proxy conflicts across the globe. The Confederacy, seeking to expand its sphere of influence and secure new territories for slave labor, might aggressively pursue imperial ambitions in the Caribbean and Latin America, leading to clashes with European colonial powers or the United States. Imagine a world where Havana, instead of being a revolutionary beacon, became a fortified Confederate outpost, a tropical bastion of the peculiar institution, its sugarcane fields worked by enslaved hands under the Confederate flag. The United States, while possessing a strong industrial base, would be geographically smaller and potentially less influential on the global stage than our own United America. It might form stronger alliances with burgeoning industrial powers like Germany or Russia, seeking to counterbalance the influence of Britain, France, and the Confederacy. Global trade patterns would be deeply affected. Cotton would remain a vital commodity, but its origin would be fraught with moral implications, potentially leading to international boycotts or sanctions against the CSA by nations committed to abolition. The very concept of international organizations, like the League of Nations or the United Nations, would be profoundly challenged. How would a world body function with two powerful American entities perpetually at odds, each lobbying for incompatible worldviews and often obstructing collective action? Military spending would be exorbitant in both Americas, diverting resources from social programs and scientific research. The specter of a devastating, perhaps even nuclear conflict between the USA and CSA would loom large, a constant threat to global stability, far more localized and immediate than the broader Cold War we experienced.
Key figures and individuals, legends reimagined.
In this alternate reality, the trajectories of familiar historical figures would be drastically altered, and new titans would emerge from the crucible of conflict. Abraham Lincoln, instead of the martyred savior of the Union, might be remembered as a tragic figure, a brilliant but ultimately defeated leader who presided over the fracturing of his nation. His legacy might be that of an abolitionist prophet whose vision remained unfulfilled. Robert E. Lee, rather than a revered military genius who surrendered, would be celebrated as the architect of the Confederacy, a victorious general, and perhaps even the nation's first president. His fame would be immense, yet his legacy would be perpetually stained by the institution he fought to preserve. Subsequent Confederate presidents would likely come from the planter aristocracy, their reigns marked by increasing authoritarianism and the struggle to balance the agrarian ideal with the demands of a modernizing world. Figures like Ulysses S. Grant might remain regional heroes for the smaller United States, never ascending to the presidency, their full potential unrealized in a diminished nation. And what of Frederick Douglass? His voice, rather than celebrating emancipation, would become an even more urgent firebrand call for global abolition. Operating from the free soil of the United States, his speeches echoing across a divided Atlantic, calling for a second, more violent liberation of his people within the CSA. His efforts might spark underground networks that grow into significant movements, perhaps even armed insurrections.
New figures would emerge. Powerful industrialists in the United States, driven by innovation and a sense of national purpose, perhaps more focused on social welfare for their workers to create a stark contrast with the CSA. In the Confederacy, a new class of cotton barons or sugar kings would rise, their wealth and power dependent on the continuation of slavery, leading to a deeply stratified and volatile political landscape. Military leaders on both sides would attain legendary status, constantly vigilant against the threat of their rival. Scientists and philosophers would find their ideas shaped by the ideological fault line, some celebrating progress and freedom in the USA, others in the CSA devising new justifications for the hierarchy they upheld. Even figures like Harriet Tubman might become not just a conductor, but a revered, almost mythical general of the Underground Railway, leading daring incursions into Confederate territory.
Cinematic conclusion: the shadow of what might have been. This alternate reality, where the South won the Civil War, is a stark and chilling reflection. It reveals the profound fragility of history, the sheer weight of a single decision, a single battlefield outcome. It is a world where progress is uneven, where human dignity is codified into property, and where the promise of liberty is enjoyed by some while denied to many, even within the same continent. The two Americas, forever looking across a fortified chasm, would serve as a constant reminder of divergent paths. One striving for an imperfect but expanding freedom, the other clinging to an archaic, brutal institution. This is a shadow America, a testament to choices made and battles won, but also to the immense, immeasurable cost of certain victories. It is a world where the very definition of union was lost, replaced by an enduring schism. And in this chilling reflection, we find not just a story of what might have been, but a profound, almost visceral gratitude for the arduous, imperfect, yet ultimately unifying path we, in our own timeline, walked. The echoes of that potential world serve as a powerful testament to the enduring and often precarious value of liberty and union.